I'm your host, Riri. Welcome to Reimagining Life, from pain to purpose, where you'll find a community focused on resilience and perseverance, sharing untold stories of hope and rebuilding while dealing with major life interruption. This podcast is made by and for people in the process of reimagining their lives. We're here to raise the voices of those who often suffer in silence, living with chronic pain and/or disability. This space is for you. We encourage you to get involved. So stick around and let's jump right into the next episode. Welcome to episode 19, where we'll learn about a parent's perspective raising a child with Down syndrome. Cindy Liu is the mother of two, disability advocate and entrepreneur extraordinaire. Cindy's story allows us to get a small preview of what it's like raising a child in a world not built for them. Cindy will tell you that she does all of her advocacy, policy work, and entrepreneurial pursuits because of nepotism. But while talking to Cindy, it becomes clear she's a powerhouse driven by her values and quest to end ableism in all forms. Cindy is dedicated to promoting accessibility and empowering individuals with disabilities. She's established Bluehoos Enterprises with the goal of creating job opportunities and fostering economic equity for this community. Her first initiative is a powerful media campaign called the Hidden Civil Rights Movement. The flagship project, Bluehoos Cafe, seeks to offer employment and ownership opportunities for individuals with disabilities through a cooperative model supported by Start.coop and the AARP Foundation. Beyond her entrepreneurial pursuit, she's a TEDx speaker and earned a Bachelor of Arts degree from the University of California, Riverside, an MBA from the Thunderbird School of Global Management, and completed an executive program at the Stanford University's Graduate School of Business. Let's jump right into our conversation. We have a special treat today. I'm very excited to welcome Cindy to the podcast. You'll hear why very shortly. Cindy is our first parent perspective and is someone who has become a powerhouse advocate and creative mind in trying to think of better solutions for raising children with disabilities and challenges. Cindy, can you please share with our audience what makes you part of the Reimaginer community?
Hi, thank you so much for having me on your podcast and for inviting me to join your community. I come to the community through my daughter. Right now, I'm not personally disabled. I'm sure I'm aging. I feel like in the morning when I wake up, I'm certainly aging towards that. But I come to the community through my daughter. She has Down syndrome. I have two kids. She's my eldest, and she's the one that sort of made me jump into the community and welcomed me into it. And I also have a son, and I realized in terms of the advocacy that I'm doing, even though it started with my daughter, it certainly extends to my son because their lives are intertwined and it is a community. So if she doesn't have access to, quote, the American dream or any other dream that she wants access to, it definitely impacts my son and our family as well. So I think also I love your word, reimagineer.
Thanks.
Yeah, for me, I learned very quickly about systemic ableism. And I think instantly when she was born, I didn't even know the word ableism because it's not really taught in school, or at least when I was growing up, much more prevalent now, but still we need some work on that front, but not at all when I was growing up.
Yeah.
But when I got her diagnosis, my heart instantly knew the word that my brain didn't quite know. And so I think in that moment, I became an advocate.
Yeah, that's awesome. So can you tell us, you're our first parent that we have interviewed. Can you sort of give us a little bit of a picture of, what are the biggest struggles for you, or also on the opposite end, the best parts of raising a child with Down syndrome? I like how you've already pointed out, obviously it affects the entire family. That is without a doubt. So yeah, what's it like for you on a typical day?
Yeah, I think what I want to also be really clear about is it's very, I would say, percentage of the day, if we're going to talk about it in that way. It's usually not her diagnosis. It's usually not the Down syndrome.
Okay.
It's usually the community and the systems built around and cultural attitudes so deeply embedded about disability. And for me, a typical day with her is kind of like any other preteen. Wake up, get up, go take care of yourself. Don't forget this, don't forget that. A little bit of let's go. Hey, this is what getting ready means. You need your shoes on. So those kinds of things, and striving for independence for both of my kids. But I will say with my daughter, she does need a little more support because she's got some mobility challenges, some fine motor challenges. And so what I would say is at our own house is thinking of systems that support accessibility and that support independence. And I've really, in the last, I'm a slow learner. In the last, she's 12 and I just figured this out. But I think in our house, helping her, you're talking about reimagining. So I'm reimagining accessibility.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, obviously it's getting in the door, but it's also language. It's also comprehension. And all of those things lead to independence. And so I read this thing and it gave me this notion of, radical customer service as a way to reimagine accessibility. And so if you think of all these organizations who are super good at customer service, like the Four Seasons, like Zappos. I remember the CEO of Zappos, he was like, we're not a shoe company. We're about customer service.
Yeah.
And so think of all the ways that they anticipate customer needs, that they make it easy for you to interact with the company. It's really about anticipating and setting up systems. That's a key component of it, and having the heart to do it.
Yeah.
So that's how I reimagine our day-to-day, but it's got its challenges, but I don't know that that's Down syndrome specific.
Right.
It's like preteen.
Yeah. Well, that's a really great point. And I hadn't thought of that before, like about Zappos and these other huge companies that really do cater to people's needs. And that's what the world needs to do. It's just hard to get there.
Yeah, I think if I'm trying to dive deeper into that mindset myself, but if you think about and coaching others in terms of that, because I think when it comes to the disability community, it's most people don't think about it in terms of customer service. And in fact, I had this what's the adjective I want to use here? I'll just say a very surprising and interesting interaction in the community that I'll tell you a little bit about. But I think when it comes to the disability community at large, the mindset that I feel like we need to shift from is this notion of a burden to notion of customer service, radical customer service, because there are a lot of us. We're very, very diverse. And we also have spending power, which I can touch upon later. But anyway.
That's a great point. Thanks for sharing that. So I know that perhaps you have always been in your life very resourceful and great at finding resources in your community. Have there been any resources? I'm talking like could be a religious organization, could be some aspect of people at school, it could be an NGO, any group in the community that's been especially supportive or helpful for you?
Yeah, I can think of 3.
Okay.
So the very first one out here, I live in California, and the first one that my family and I connected with is a wonderful organization started by moms and parents called Club 21. And it's for families. It's a resource center specifically for families raising a child or having a person with Down syndrome in their family. It is extended to the, extended family as well, but it's specifically for the Down syndrome community. And when my daughter was little, out here, we also have a program called Early Start that's state supported. Mm-hmm. So we were, deep into learning about early interventions, all the alphabets, OTPT, SLP. And for us, it was really learning about her as a whole child. And it was also one of the first places my husband and I felt a true sense of belonging because we didn't have to explain anything. Everyone just got it. And we felt very, very welcomed and we found a place to belong. And I'm still part of that community, a little bit less now because it's about an hour away from where I live, but it's still definitely worth the drive. So they have ongoing training and really, really helped me understand what the school systems and the IEP process was like. The other organization that I really also hold in very, very high regard is the National Down Syndrome Congress. Congress. And the people there, especially on the policy team, are, can I swear on your show?
Sure, go for it.
They're such badasses. I'm talking like original badass. And the policy people I'm thinking about are so smart, so knowledgeable about policy, but also warm and cuddly and human. You know, it's not this chilly, cold. So from that organization, I learned about advocacy. I relearned how a law is made. You know, like the Schoolhouse Rock.
Yes.
Yeah. I'm just a bill. So we, you know, they organize meetings on the Hill in DC, and they have advocacy networks throughout the states. And so I'm still very much involved with that organization, and really credit me learning a lot from those, not credit myself, but credit I really credit me for learning so much. No. I think they understand policy so deeply, but they also come to this work as a mother's heart, you know.
Are they all people who have people with Down syndrome in their families or no?
Yes. As I am working on this project, I hadn't realized that one of my friends was like super badass and really involved in a major law that we all use today in schools. So she was part of the reauthorization of IDEA in 1997. And I said to her, I was like, oh my God, do you just walk around going, you're welcome, people? I know it's not perfect, but like it was way worse. Like just privately in your head. Is that what you say to yourself? Is someone's like complaining? And, you know, and she's still in it. She's still in the work.
Wow.
More than 30, 40 years later.
That's awesome.
It's pretty amazing. Yeah. I said 3, but I can't remember this.
Oh, is there another one? Oh, you named 3. So you said Club 21, Early Start, and the National Down Syndrome Congress.
Okay, Early Start is not an organization. It's a state-run program that's funded through something.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, so I can't remember the third one.
Okay.
I'm sorry.
It's okay. But I was going to ask you, do you know, is Club 21, for example, available in other states?
Not yet.
Okay.
You know, they go deep in what they do instead of like sort of, if I put on my marketing hat, instead of horizontal growth, they're very deep into providing the community with a whole child into adulthood. Okay. I think they had, during COVID, they had things online, of course. And actually, my husband just joined a dad's group that they started. What I really love about it, and I secretly thought to myself, but now he'll know, I was like, I love that the dad's group is also not just like, hey, let's get together and chit chat, get to know each other. There was also an educational component to it. Because I feel like the default parent, which typically is the mother, has such a mental load when it comes to preparing and thinking about and reimagining a world for their child in general, but I would say exponentially more for a child with a disability. Yeah. Because the pathways are not yet fully laid out in a way for our kids than they are for non-disabled kids. And so what I loved about this dad's group that Club 21 started, which is he attended this week, and it was online so more people can attend, is that they also had an educator talking about transitions. And it's a nice way to sort of empower
the dads.
The dads. Yeah.
Yeah, that's really great. Okay. So have you found yourself surprised about any particular aspect of being a parent of a child with Downs? I'm sure any parent would say yes, whether they have a child with any type of disability. But I'm just saying, was there anything where you were like, wow, I did not expect that?
Yeah, there's some. I'll talk about sort of the parenting of it, and I'll talk about my learning. It's really learning to understand, like, this is a personality instead of a result of a diagnosis. Like, this is just who she is. And she's pretty spicy, but she also has such a way of, like, I don't know, she has mastered the soft backhanded compliment in a way. Or like, okay, so here's just an example. She loves music. Music is her gateway to so many things. And so sometimes we sing together and I don't sing super well or play the guitar super. Like if you think of like old time Adam Sandler on SNL, that's how I sing and that's how I play the guitar, like just barely.
Okay.
Although he was much better. Sorry, Adam Sandler. He was way, way, way better because he's on SNL. So I'm trying to like entertain her and really pouring my heart out. And she's like, shh, shh, I want mommy to leave. And she's like, Mom, stop. I was like, you don't like it when I sing? She's like, I want mommy to leave. And she's got the sweetest cherub smile as she's saying that. And then she put, shh. I was like, dude, that's like so ruthlessly honest, but it's also so sweet. Like there's no malice to it. It's just, So it's the joy of seeing her personality. The other surprising thing is I don't know if this is all people with a disability or all people with Down syndrome, but I'll say I've heard other parents raising kids with Down syndrome say this is, we all have our inner voice. Like, for example, when she goes and works out, the trainer's like, come on, let's lift these kettlebells and walk across the gym. In our head, we're like, no, I don't want to. She literally says that out loud. No, I don't want to. But then she also cheers herself up. Come on, let's go. Let's do it.
That's so cute.
It's really cute. There's one night, I don't know why. I think kids, showers are super relaxing. They don't get it yet. But like, I said, come on, it's time to take a shower. And so we've learned is just giving her time to do it when she's ready, but also setting a time limit because it could take forever. So I just went upstairs waiting for her, but I could hear her. But she literally was like, Gollum, oh, I don't want to shower. Come on, you can do it. It's like a hot massage. No, I was so tired. It was really funny. And then I hear her feet marching upstairs. So that was a little funny and surprising to me.
That's really sweet.
There's so many funny stories. I was at this conference and this one mom was telling me she was wanting to really motivate her daughter to get more healthy and more fit and to lose some weight. And her daughter really wanted to drive. So she said to her, okay, well, if you lose weight, then I'll teach you how to drive. And her daughter says, why? I see fat people driving all the time.
She's quick.
Isn't that hilarious? And then you're like, that's super logical. Can't argue with that.
That is really funny.
Yeah. It's funny. I mean, if you can't laugh, you'll just...
Yeah.
The other part of that is surprising is really how deeply embedded ableism is. I mean, I hinted on it earlier, so I'll tell you our story of being out in the community and being at Parks and Rec and signing up for a dance class. And we're not going to be on Dancing with the Stars anytime soon, but she really loves music and she was doing her best. And I was helping her a little bit. And the teacher, after I guess that was warm up, starts dividing up the class. And it's like, hey, pointing at the kids, you, matching them up. And then literally it was like the parting of the sea with the kids on either side of us. And we're down the sort of the barrel. And I'm looking at her and she just looks at my daughter. And she was going to move on and just leave us out. And I was like, what about her? And she goes, oh, well, is she a teenager? Because people with Down syndrome are usually smaller in stature. I was like, yeah, she's 12. She's been registered in your class for weeks.
Oh my God.
And then of course, oh, okay, let me get back to you, blah, blah, blah. And my daughter instantly in that moment, it was so quick, just realized how unwelcomed she was or made to feel. And I was like, hey, go get in line. You want to? No.
Yeah.
Do you want to? She's like, I want to go. I was like, okay, let's go. She's way more graceful than me because I was about to like, hey, let's just have some words, teacher. I don't really care if you're in the middle of class. So my daughter's more graceful. Terrible. We left. I put her with some music and she was waiting for me. And then I decided to have a conversation with the director of the center who subsequently made it worse with 2 other interactions.
Yeah.
I mean, it really was like, I don't understand the mindset so quick to be like, well, why didn't you do something? Why didn't she do something in terms of my daughter? And I said, whoa. I have a personal aide with her. That's my business. My daughter's 12. She's a student enrolled in this class. I paid a registration fee. I paid for this teacher to teach her. You're telling me she doesn't know my daughter was in her class? She's been there for weeks. So she literally didn't see her.
Wow.
And then I said, my daughter is more graceful than me. If it were up to me, I would still be in that room disrupting the class so that I can educate the teacher. But I'm talking to you, director. And she consistently was like, why didn't your aide go introduce herself and your daughter to the teacher? I was like, well, again, unless you're paying my aide, that's none of your business.
Right. Like, does every child have to do that?
She did what she was supposed to do. Yeah, she did what she was supposed to do. Brought my daughter, made sure she was safe, et cetera, et cetera. Why doesn't your teacher know students in her class?
Yeah.
So she called me back and made it worse. I said, I'd love a follow-up. I know she's teaching, but she was both siding. This director was like, oh, I want to hear both sides. I was like, okay, well, you do that. So then she calls me back and she tells me the whole process. Well, you were registered here. You missed the first class. And so your daughter's only been in here for this amount of time. It's great, in terms of what they're trying to do. There is a box where you click inclusion, supports, et cetera, That click box, when you register, generates an auto email that says, hey, we saw you click this box, call us back. Okay, so again, the burden is on the people who need the support.
Right.
So this director's telling me all of this, and I was already annoyed. You're telling me all of this because it's my daughter's fault? We registered. She was only here. She's like, no, I'm just telling you the process. I said, okay, what do you want to accomplish with this phone call? And she got very upset. I was upset. She's raising her voice at me. I was like, excuse me, wait a minute. This is what you want to accomplish? Raising your voice at a community member and a child who your teacher made her feel like shit? No. So then she was demanding that I listen to her. And in my head, I was like, you need some training on community interaction and basic customer service.
Yeah.
But then I asked her, I was like, how are your teachers vetted? Why do they not know the students in their class? Why do they not have some basic understanding? If you're saying, well, there's lots of kids in this center and they come in and out. I said, no, well, she's been there consistently. Well, she was just sitting on the sidelines. Oh, so the teacher did see her and chose to ignore her multiple times, not knowing she was in her class. But even if that were the case, you see a kid coming into your class showing interest, wouldn't you as a human being be like, oh, hey, dude, what's your name? Come join us. Come dance next to me. Let me find you a buddy. Let's make a community. Nope. And so it ended in high fashion. She says, I'm done. Not before comparing my child to a toddler.
Oh my God.
She was like, well, I don't understand why your aide didn't, and I wasn't moving on that. I was like, again, that's not for you to be concerned about. She's like, but it's like when you have a toddler. I was like, nope. She goes, let me finish my thought. I said, nope. When you compare my 12-year-old to a toddler, nothing good is going to come after that. And so she goes, I'm done here. I said, listen, there's no two sides of this. You have a responsibility to the community. You have a responsibility for the people that you contract to offer classes, and they, at the bare minimum, need to know who's in their class. That's what you need to be concerned about. Aside from that, this whole two-siding thing, as if it's my responsibility or my daughter's responsibility, that's not a thing.
Right.
Where is the concern for my daughter's feelings as a human being, as a child? Yeah. And I said, we're part of this community. We're not going away. So I guess I'll see you next week, and this is how we're going to interact. This is how you've decided to leave it with a community member. I will give her credit after that. And she did send an email saying some follow-up and apologizing, recognizing, of course, my daughter wants to be included and have fun and thanking me for being an advocate, blah, blah, blah. I was like, okay, I will give her credit for that. But those are the kinds of so deeply embedded. She had no idea that she had infantilized my daughter by comparing her to a toddler.
Yeah.
And then she, in the course of the conversation, was like, oh, the teacher has a child with a disability. I was like, well, then she should know better. And in the back of my head, I was like, well, that's like saying I got a black friend. I was like, that doesn't mean anything to me.
Yeah.
Right? Again, all of this deeply embedded mindset of ableism. Oh, so all kids with disabilities are a monolith?
And this is just such a microcosm of one class. I mean, there's so many times that this type of thing happens throughout the day or any time.
Yeah. And, a friend of mine, we're working on this project together. She's our producer for the project. And she has this phrase, it's like inside baseball, outside baseball. Like you don't know what you don't know, but and I had shared in this conversation with the director, I said, my daughter has a very visible disability. I can bet you there's at least 10% of the students in that class who have something that's invisible or undiagnosed.
Yeah.
And to choose not to see her, to try to validate that by saying she has a child with a disability. I didn't say all this, but like there's a lot to unpack here.
Yeah.
And where we lose it when adults come to defend undefendable behavior, in my opinion, is the child in the mix of that.
Of course. Yeah.
But you asked earlier, like, what was surprising? Like, I knew sexism growing up as a woman. I know racism growing up as a Chinese woman, but there's no ism like ableism.
Yeah.
That is so deeply rooted. There is a lot of progress in terms of conversations and cultural shifts, and I really welcome that. But it's these little moments here where you're like, wow, you really didn't think about that at all.
Yeah. Yeah. And it's so unfortunate for the kids and for the parents and the kids in the class. That's not the type of model that should be shown to them.
That's exactly right. And now, after our conversation, I want to model to my daughter and the community. We're not hiding. We are part of this community. So it's the work that I have to also do to start bridging.
Yeah.
But my friend Brittany, the inside outside baseball person, she's like, why is the burden to make the change always on the person who's affected?
Yeah.
That could take decades that could take a lifetime, but I get where she's coming from, and it's such an injustice in her head, which is so true. But then you do the work.
Yeah. Well, thank you for sharing that example.
Sorry, that was a long story. You can tell
but it's a really good example of one instance, and people can imagine there are many things that happen like that. Yeah, it's important that people are aware of it. So I want to ask you, what strategies do you use to help support your child's development and learning? I know you've mentioned that you have an aide who's with her, but do you have, I don't know if it's sort of systems in place or strategies that you've developed?
Well, I've got it 100% figured out at all times. So I'm definitely the expert on this. I'm being sarcastic.
I know.
I would say the thing that it's not first of all, it's not a specific thing in terms of a tactic or what to do. I think a strategy is to always try to think about, like, how does she learn? And I feel like there is a way to generalize as you're raising any child, non-disabled specifically, like as they reveal their personalities to you over time and able to communicate, it's so fun to like figure out how they think and that they're their own person. It's a little more challenging with my daughter because she has some communication challenges. She can speak. She's not conversational in her speech, but she can definitely get her point across with like a shh. I want you to leave. I was like, I want you to leave. That's 5 words. That's awesome. Also super clear.
Very.
So I think the strategy I would say that I try to implore is trying to pause and understand, like, this is how she learns. This is how we reach her. This is what her, quote, behavior is communicating. Because there's this whole feeling that behavior is communication. It's not something in order to focus on compliance. It's really like, what's not working here? And also, you are not allowed to be a brat.
Yeah.
Like, I think that's where I'm figuring it out, because they always say, have high expectations and imagine that they can. And of course, all of that is true. And in those moments, I have to pause and I try to err on the side of mean mommy. Like, you don't get to do that. And I think she gets it. And I know some people, it makes them, I don't really care. I don't care what some people think. Not your kid, not your family.
Right, exactly. It's so individual.
Yeah, but I think it does make people feel uncomfortable when I discipline my disabled child. And there is some internalized ableism, obviously. And obviously it depends on the discipline. But, you know, I do my best. We do our best to have high expectations in terms of, you know, I'll give you an example. She is a creature of habit. She has this favorite spot on the sofa. And there was a while where she didn't care if you were occupying that spot. When she wanted to sit in that spot, she would literally like find the smallest crevice and squeeze herself into it. And practically like, she was fine being uncomfortable, but you're like, you were literally sitting on top of my chest. Like, did you get... And so for a while we were moving to give her space. And then it clicked in me. I was like, you are if you have roommates and you do that to your roommate or a partner, like that's just not going to fly. And so, and the awesome thing too is having a second child who automatically is like, I don't see the Down syndrome. I see you being a jerk.
Yeah.
Right. And so those are those moments, those small examples of like, this is not acceptable, you know, and you need to be taught and you're not going to like it, but too bad. This is etiquette.
And it's being a parent.
Yeah.
Really. One
day you're not going to be cute and cuddly. And you're going to be like 150 pounds and still trying to squeeze in that crevice and people are going to not like you. Like, this is not okay.
Oh my goodness.
So that was a little bit of surprising. And a strategy is always keeping that in mind.
Okay. Okay, great. So I want to sort of pivot a little bit because I'd love people to hear about all that you're doing in the community. So let's talk about your research, your political activism, your entrepreneurial activities. I mean, you're doing so much. How did you get started on these paths? If you can just briefly mention.
Yeah, it's really with a mother's heart. I always joke that nepotism is my spirit animal that drives most things. You know, we came to parenting a little bit older in our lives than maybe typical parents. And I just sort of immediately went to employment because growing up, again, I didn't see many innovative ways to employ people with disabilities. What I saw in the community was back then you had grocery bagger. I'm pre-Google, people, pre-Google. It's okay. But, you know, you had grocery store baggers and your Walmart greeter, and there's no shame in any of those jobs. I will say those are not jobs that make a living wage.
Right.
And those are not jobs that necessarily are career opportunities. And so I reimagined a future for my kid. And I knew that I had to build it while also working to change the system in a meaningful way. And part of me felt like the best way to make that change is to demonstrate how to do it. Of course, I don't know how to do it.
Yes, you do.
I suffer from a little bit of how hard can this be? I was like, it's hard. But, you know, and I also suffer from like, I'm just going to poke my head in this room. What's going on here?
Yeah.
So that's sort of how I got into it. So in terms of policy, I have a grassroots organization called We Belong, and I'm in the process of turning it into a nonprofit. Grassroots was really so that I was able to do it with really self-funded funds, redundancy, self-funding the effort, and policy and advocacy is accessible through Zoom, especially during times of COVID, and speaking up and being in those rooms to make a public comment, et cetera, et cetera. But I think now if we want to do some programs and training and have access to funds and really sustain this effort, being a nonprofit is really important. So that's where we're going there. But with We Belong, I'm really proud of what we've accomplished. One of the things is I serve in a public safety advisory group for our county. And I think certainly having that lens from the point of view of a female, Chinese, part of the disability community, I think that was really important that we're there. And I really appreciate being appointed and invited to that role. So in that capacity, We Belong focuses on safe, educated, and employed. Those are our three main pillars. And so with safety, we're working on a number of things. Family Justice Center is coming up, and we're really talking to the organizers of how can we make supports accessible to victims who are disabled. And there's elder abuse in this mix. When people think of disability, I think they think of individuals who are born with a disability, as opposed to those who acquire it through the aging process, through an illness, through an accident, through being victimized. And so the conversations that I'm having with the organizers there and community members and community leaders on public safety is really how can we support our victims and make supports accessible, and also support them by being able to reliably tell their story so that a perpetrator gets prosecuted. And that's important, but also challenging.
Yeah.
And I'm very, very fortunate that our public safety leaders, it's not a hurdle to convince them. They're like, yes, and, right? So
Wow.
some other people are like, huh? But they're not. They're like, yes, and let's do it. Sorry, for education, what I'm really, really pleased about is We Belong as part of a coalition, an alliance focused on creating more inclusive college programs for people with intellectual developmental disabilities. California has a handful of them. The very first one, there's only one at a UC, and it's groundbreaking, and they're doing amazing work, but we need more of that. And so this coalition and the alliance got a bill passed last year, and the governor signed it, is AB 447. And that really solidifies and validates that, yes, there is existing funding for it. Our kids need access to it. And more importantly, we need more of these programs. So that bill embedded into Ed Code in the state, which is amazing.
Wow.
And even more proud is this year we got into the budget $2 million to develop a inclusive college coordinating center for our whole state.
Wow.
And that's really something that I'm very proud of. I'm super proud of people in our coalition who really worked in those rooms and talked to the governor's staff and the budgeting staff, because it was a tight budget cycle for California. But to get $2 million committed to this, an ongoing commitment so that we can sustain these programs is super important. And a coordinating center is a national model. California is a really large state. It's like the 6th largest economy in the world. And we have a lot of people, and we're geographically large. So a centralized place for inclusive college with funding to sustain it is something I'm really, really proud of. That's sort of on the policy front.
That is so cool.
Yeah, super proud of that. And then on the employment front, I'm a budding entrepreneur. I launched Luhu's Enterprises, and we have two main projects. One project is a social impact media project. It's a multi-video series called The Hidden Civil Rights Movement. And we're focusing on the landmark cases in disability rights movement. I referenced my friend who was like, dude, do you just say you're welcome? So we're talking to badasses in policy who have been doing this work for decades and continue to do it. We're talking to real people. We're talking to advocates who have a lived perspective of being disabled. And we're really trying to come with the real life stories. But our goal is to entertain, educate, and employ. And through Luhu's Enterprises and this sort of social impact media project, I'm proud to say I was able to employ 3 people from our community through this project and hope to do more with that. So
that's awesome.
The marquee, I guess, the goal, the other project that I'm working on under the enterprise is a cafe concept. And that's still a fetus. We're not yet to announce it, but essentially it's a cafe concept to employ people with disabilities using a cooperative model. And just to get in the weeds a little bit on cooperatives, I think for me, I referenced when my daughter was young, a baby actually. And it just dawned on me like employment is going to be important and I have to create it. And it's taken me a while and many iterations to figure out. But I love the cooperative model because I believe that it is the best model so far that offers ownership, equity, and good pay. And it invites and includes persons with disabilities to be part of, in a meaningful way, part of the process. And if you don't know what a cooperative is, REI is the largest membership consumer-based cooperative. So the idea of a cooperative is one member, one vote. I love that feeling. And it's not a feeling, it's a principle. And sometimes you imagine your hippy dippy grocery store that has local groceries, local fare. Those often can be cooperatives, and those are usually employee-based cooperatives. So if you're an employee at one of these, just as a model, the grocery stores, you have say into how the business is run.
That's pretty cool.
Yeah, so that's what I'm imagining. So just a few dreams.
I love how you're like, I'm just casually doing a few things. I'm doing policy, working on education, getting $2 million, blah, blah, blah. It's like, oh my God, all of these things are like huge.
Thank you. Yeah. I suffer from how hard can this be? And then sometimes like, why can't I sleep? But, I feel like there's just such an urgency to it. And the lesson that I learned is I can't do it by myself and I shouldn't do it by myself. And how might I bring people along? And I think the other thing that I learned is just through this media project is I don't have to have it complete in order to employ. My goal is employ as many people as possible. And I learned if I can employ people through the process, even as gig workers, supporting their passions and their efforts and their employment goals, that's already impact. So figuring out how to be impactful along the way, it's not sort of like this only when it's done kind of approach.
Right. So I'm interested in all of it. For the Hidden Civil Rights Project, has it been released or where are you in the process of that one?
No, we've done filming. We've done some filming. We're working on our trailer and we're working on the edits, and it's going to be coming out soon. Our goal with that, again, with the enterprise piece of it, is to entertain, educate, and employ. And so we really want this to be an entertaining way for people to really learn about the landmark cases in our movement and in our American civil rights. Disability rights was not included in the 1964 Civil Rights Act.
Right.
And for whatever reason, I don't know, I wasn't there. But I think that history matters. And so that's why some 30 years later, it was necessary for the Americans with Disability Acts. It was necessary for IDEA, necessary for so many other things. And, there's many bills in Congress currently that are really aiming to dismantle the system that mandates poverty for people with disabilities. And what I mean by that, and I want to be very careful when I say this, is just setting aside our education system. But suffice to say, just touching upon that briefly, our education system, K to 12 or K to age 22, doesn't prepare students with disabilities for college and career readiness. Let's say it does. Let's say you're part of the small percentage of kids, and it's getting larger, but who are college and career ready. Where are the college programs? There's across the country, there's maybe 150, 200 college programs, which is amazing because that also took decades. But the pathway is not solid or clear.
Right.
And there are not necessarily multiple pathways in which to choose. So then you're into limited opportunities, expanding but limited, and then you get to employment. Where are the jobs, right? And they're still in the books from 1938, Section 14C, that allows corporations to pay less than minimum wage.
Yeah.
I was surprised to recently learn just through this Hidden Civil Rights Project, when interviewing one of the experts, that person said, oh yeah, a lot of the agencies that use 14C are government contractors. So it's built into the system. So we get paid, it's allowed to be paid under minimum wage.
Yeah.
Then let's say you're paid a fair wage, which may not be a living wage. Then if you get Social Security related supports, your assets limitations are $2,000.
Yeah.
You're penalized if you get married because they don't double it or triple it. No, they just give you $1,000 more if you're married. Well, that puts you in a system of poverty. You're neither allowed to earn
Right.
more if you need those supports, for example, that keep you alive,
Yeah.
or that offer transportation so that you can go to your job. And it wasn't really until 10 years ago where we could really put money aside for our disabled loved one. And that was with the ABLE Act. So it's mandated poverty, and how might we continue to dismantle that? I don't use that word lightly, but I truly think the heart moves the mind. So helping people understand. So there's several bills in Congress that are related to SSI, Social Security income, removing the marriage penalty.
There's also talk about changing the 14C one that you were mentioning.
Yes, there is. I think it's called Competitive Integrative Employment.
I don't remember the name.
No, there is a bill in Congress right now to get rid of Section 14C in a meaningful and thoughtful way that cares for loved ones with disabilities who are part of those programs, because you don't want to just pull the rug from our loved ones who are part of that program.
Right.
Because there was nothing available before that.
Yeah. I mean, there's so much going on, and there's so many people like you who are doing just these amazing things. I want to support all of it. What do I do?
Yeah. Well, that's a great question. And I think it starts concentric circles closest to your heart. Like find a heart passion like you're doing is to share the stories and to give a platform and to talk to people. That's very, very meaningful, because really moving hearts is the way to move the mind, because multiple people are going to listen to your podcast and go, oh, well, that's not right. That can't, no, like,
That's the hope.
Yeah, it is. I mean, honestly. And I think what's happening on an international stage, and this is an example of how culture is shifting. Right now, we're a few weeks away from a presidential election.
Yeah.
And in the last few elections for the presidency, the focus on disability and the needs of our disabled community is elevated onto these stages.
Yeah.
And in a very visible way with Governor Walz's son this time. And so seeing the conversations around that is uplifting and maddening.
Yeah, at the same time. Yeah.
At the same time, but the conversations are happening, and that's important.
I agree.
People can do a lot. Start by paying attention, focus on one area. And even just if you're seeing somebody in the community, start by saying hi, like that dumb dance teacher. You could have just said hi.
And so what about people who are, just anyone in the community who hears your episode, is inspired, really wants to do something to help, but has no idea what to do? What would you recommend for them? They're probably not going to start a podcast or take on that much effort, but what kind of suggestions might you have for them?
I think if they found your podcast and is listening to my rambling, I would say stay curious and learn more. The biggest curiosity is going to feed you in more ways than what I can tell you. So number one thing is stay curious about it. If you're interested, you can find and follow me in certain social media platforms. You can find the Hidden Civil Rights Movement on Instagram.
We'll share that.
But I really want individuals to start in their communities, and it's literally saying hi. You see it, and to not be afraid, because what I will say is most people who are in the disability community, as a person with a disability and or their caregiver loved one, they can tell intention. So if you're coming with a curious mindset, with an open heart, wanting to learn more, encourage yourself to not be afraid to say hi and to engage in a conversation, find a common ground. It could be anywhere. Whether you have a visible disability or not, just taking a pause and being curious about someone else's day. Because I think our percentage of the population is like 15 to 20%. You are interacting with a disabled person throughout your day, whether you know it or not.
Right. Yeah, that's a good point. So I want to go back to a couple more questions for you.
Mhm.
So I know you said that Luhu's Cafe is not quite ready to go, but I know you've been working on the design and it's a really cool project. I mean, just the way that you've thought it out and are trying to put it together. What do you need at this point to help make it a reality?
Oh, thank you for that question. Well, I think we need, I was going to say money, but I don't want to start with money. And then I said it and I started with money.
It's okay.
But I think for me, my vision for the cafe is to offer a variety of employment opportunities so that I can employ as many people with disabilities in a diverse way.
Mhm.
So when it comes to employment, there's something known as the 3 F's that typically is for folks with disabilities. And it's usually filth, so some sort of custodial,
Mhm.
flowers, and filing. Those are the 3 F's. Inherently, there's nothing wrong with those industries. They are multi-million-dollar industries. It's the kind of job opportunities that are being offered within those industries. So my hope, my vision with the cafe is to look at all areas of the business. So you think operations and procurement, you think marketing and branding, you think maintenance literally of the cafe itself, finances. There's many
Mhm.
aspects to running a business. And in every single one of those aspects that are super important, we aim to hire a person with a disability, thinking diversely.
Yeah, that's great.
So I think right now it's really where I am is working on the governance, working on some of those foundational pieces. And that's why it's not quite ready to launch.
Mhm.
But I am proud to say that it's supported by Start.coop, which is a cooperative organization that supports startups. And I
Hmm.
was lucky enough to be accepted into their accelerator program. And it's also supported by the ARP Foundation through that Start.coop program.
That's great.
Yeah. And I forgot to mention that the Hidden Civil Rights Movement, the video series,
Mhm.
is supported by the National Down Syndrome Congress
Wow.
and AUCD. And we're working on other partnerships as we speak. So there's a lot spinning, which is
Yeah.
all good things. And I think fine tuning the cafe concept and really being out there looking at product mix, looking at branding, looking at what service do we want to provide the community, all of those things is where I'm currently at.
Great. So the first thing I kind of want to ask and have in the back of my mind is, how is it you have time to do all of this and raise 2 children and work?
Well, you just throw the idea of balance out the door. Nothing's balanced. You're like, ooh, this one's spinning. Let's spin this one. Let's follow the momentum on that. Oh, that one almost fell. Honestly, my table gets cleared when it comes to my kids. And I think most parents would make that choice.
Yeah.
Being able to do what I'm doing is a privilege in
Mhm.
so many ways. Like I'm privileged to have some financial stability,
Yeah.
to be able to do this work and sustain it on my own. Like it's self-funded. I'm privileged to be able to have the knowledge base and have the time to procure the knowledge and access to individuals who know policy and things like that. And most of the time people do policy like, yeah, come on, we need more people. Yeah, advocates, come on. So I guess I would say it's truly a privilege.
Yeah.
And I also want to use that privilege really well because I know that there are members of our community who are truly struggling
Yeah.
to balance their day, to get access to the supports that they need, to afford what they need. And that's how I want to use my privilege. So I don't do everything well. Clearly, I could tell you the scroll of all of the mistakes I make in every aspect of my life. And I have a very supportive husband,
Yeah.
good
It's great.
kids, but I think it's a privilege to have that support in those things.
But
So
it's also a privilege for us, and by us, I mean people in the disability community, that we have people like you who are such powerhouses and know how to put these types of things together and are spending your precious time on really trying to make a difference for people now and in the future. I mean, that's really valuable. So thank
Thank you. That's my hope and promise. And I feel like that's the responsibility. But let's not forget that nepotism is really driving all this.
That doesn't matter. That's fine.
I'm teasing you.
I
She
know.
needs a job, though. She don't need a job. You cannot sit where I'm sitting. I'm on the couch. Yeah, all those things.
All right. So I don't know if you'll be able to answer this one, but I'm thinking about all of your different efforts that you're working on. And you can think about whichever ones you want to, but what does success look like to you?
That is a difficult one. I think it boils down to my children, that they are living their best life and have the opportunities to live their best life. That's what success looks like for me. Of course, I want all of these endeavors to continue to make an impact and to be lasting. I believe that those efforts that I've shared contribute to that. Even without those things coming to fruition, success for me is if my loved ones are living their best life.
That's wonderful.
Now we've come to our rapid fire 5 for 5 questions. Please answer honestly and quickly, whatever comes to mind.
So the first question is, what's your favorite sound?
Oh, that's a good one. So cheesy, but I really love hearing kids laugh.
Yeah.
They have that deep belly laugh.
Yep, totally.
Love it. And the rain, sound of rain.
What about your favorite word?
Oh, why do I go to bad words? I go to bad words, so you can imagine all the bad words. I have some of my favorites.
All right.
By the way, my child with Down syndrome repeats.
Well, of course. I mean,
well, and of course, as a parent, I was like, said it super clear and use the right context. What's wrong here?
Exactly. Like any parent.
Yeah, exactly.
What's your favorite guilty pleasure? Or it doesn't have to be guilty.
Oh, I think pleasure you just shouldn't feel guilty about.
I agree.
Come to that era of my life. Like, just enjoy it.
Yeah.
I do love a good cocktail.
Okay.
And I like making cocktails.
Oh, cool. All right. The next one is, what's something that you've learned that you wish other people would understand?
I don't have a knee-jerk one for that.
It's a little bit deeper.
Yeah, no, that's a great question. I have learned about ableism, and I want people to understand more about their own internalized ableism.
Yeah.
I've learned about mine, I should just say.
Right. And the last one, what advice would you give to an 18-year-old version of yourself?
Oh my God. Find more attractive glasses that fit your face. Learn to dress a little bit better. But no, those are jokes. I don't know. I'm challenged with this, honestly, because I feel like the journey that I've walked, and this also sounds super like Earth Mother and Weather Cheesley, but the journey that I walked, like if I was doing this work earlier, I probably wouldn't. It took me having a child and being a parent to really understand. So I don't ever judge anyone for that necessarily. So I think I would tell my 18-year-old self is to learn to find your voice, to live authentically, and that you're a good kid. You've got good values. And life's going to surprise you. You're going to be okay. You're going to learn to laugh and put that sarcasm to work.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's what I would say.
Thank you. Well, those are the questions that I have for you. Do you have anything you wanted to add?
No, you were very thorough. No, I think I probably said too much. But
no, I don't think
I had a great time and really appreciate the work that you're doing to sustain and elevate these stories. I know it's a passion project and it is important. And I would love to hear your story as well as to how you want to reimagine a community that you became a part of as well. So
Well, thank you very much. My story in terms of how I became part of the Reimagining community is actually in episode 2A and 2B. But the part that's not in there, because I haven't fully finished thinking about it yet, is sort of...
Because someone didn't ask you those 5 questions.
Well, that's totally true.
Right.
is sort of where I want to go from here. I'm enjoying doing the podcast and talking to people who are doing amazing things like you. And I want to see sort of how else I can contribute and what I can add.
That's great.
TBD. Stay tuned.
Yeah, that's awesome. I will stay tuned.
All right. Well, thank you so much for doing this.
In this episode, we learned about Cindy's perspective related to raising children with and without disabilities. Cindy speaks eloquently about how her daughter's Down syndrome is usually not the problem, that most problems arise because of deeply ingrained ableism and people not being educated or aware that all children deserve equal respect and attention. When problems arise that prevent her daughter from reaching her goals or desires, it impacts not only her daughter, but also her son, as their lives as siblings are closely linked. When her daughter is singled out, it impacts the whole family unit. Cindy shares about her challenges in raising a preteen, which any parent can relate to, and the fact that it's more about learning how to help your child learn in a way that works for them, rather than focusing on her disability. Cindy introduces the mental shift that needs to take place between seeing people with disabilities as a burden to approaching community integration the way successful companies approach radical customer service, where they're able to anticipate people's needs and cater to them well. Cindy shares some parenting challenges and concerns for her daughter in the future, which has led her to become an advocate for people with disabilities, an entrepreneur dedicated to finding or creating living wage employment for people with disabilities. Cindy is hard at work on a number of projects, from serving on a community safety board to make sure people with disabilities are safe and can have access to transportation, to creating a grassroots organization that she's currently working to turn into a nonprofit. Her organization, We Belong, strives to make policy and advocacy accessible to all. The goals are to create a safe space, help educate students, which includes working on inclusive college programs, and launching Woohoo's Enterprises, which is currently working on filming a social impact video project where they're able to employ 30 people with disabilities and look to do more in the future. Her project, A Film Hidden Civil Rights Movement, features advocates who made history and is currently in process. Cindy has a special opportunity to share the trailer with listeners of the podcast. See our show notes for how to access this exclusive opportunity. Woohoo Enterprises also plans to open a cooperative cafe that will employ people with disabilities and provide ownership equity. It's clear Cindy is a parent with great compassion and drive to make her community more inclusive and friendly to all people with all different types of abilities. Her policy and entrepreneurial work is incredibly impressive and shows what kind of difference a deeply dedicated parent can make. Cindy redefines the word mom. Thanks for listening to Reimagining Life from Pain to Purpose. We're always interested to hear your feedback and questions. So leave a review and drop us a note at reimagininglifepodcast@gmail.com or find us on Facebook or Instagram. We hope you'll tune in for the next episode.